It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
Hey, welcome back to the Real Estate Breakfast as we track the latest movements in the Australian property market, streaming right now on Spotify and Apple Podcasts from Cairns to Hobart, from Perth to regional Australia. And we've got the market pretty much covered. So many talking points. And the weekend, that is a distant memory, but not if you fell in love with a property, if you were out searching. It is a Monday, June the 1st. Here we go. Soon we'll start to look at the end of the year, won't we, at this rate? Famous birthdays, if you're celebrating today for June the 1st, Heidi Klum, still looking fantastic at 53. Alanis Morissette, she's turning 52, and Tom Holland, the actor, he is turning 30. Something that happened on this day back in 1980, CNN launched officially as the world's first 24-hour television news network. And it was just, last week, the week before, Ted Turner, the maverick, absolute maverick, he passed away. But what a legacy he has. Right, let's go to Charles Tarbey, who we're going to catch up with this morning. He is a busy boy. He's the managing director at Century 21 Australasia. He's also the owner of Better Homes and Gardens Real Estate Australia and New Zealand. And Charles, welcome to the Real Estate Breakfast this morning. You were telling me that you've been in the industry for 5 decades. Gee, that's a long time, Charles.
It goes so quick, and I think a lot of agents don't realise it, Craig. You know, when I started at 17 years of age, and I thought I'll be there for 5 years, make as much money as I can and retire. That's a ridiculous dream, even if you do achieve it. But before you know it, you're there for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and this is my 55th year in the real estate industry.
I want you to take us back, because I think this is going to be really interesting this morning. Take us back to the first day that you were on the job as a real estate agent, what that year was, you know, green-eyed, about to hopefully start this career as a real estate agent. What can you remember?
I remember it vividly because it was the end of 72, just finished boarding school in Goulburn, came down to the Big Smoke. My sister was a property manager in a real estate office in Marrickville, inner West Sydney, and she said, stop sitting around waiting for your HSC results, come in and help me clean some flats. So I did in the first couple of weeks, and then she said, look, one of the property managers is going away, put a shirt and tie on and come and help me in the office with admin tasks, and that's how it started.
In 1972, gee, the Holden Valiants would have been out pretty strong then, wouldn't they?
In fact, I had one. You know, the good old Charger. So now coming into this next year that'll be 55 years thereabouts, and I've never left. I tried to leave. I wanted to be an architect. I was a musician. I was interested in music, and I was interested in drawing, but I ended up in neither of those.
Yeah, what sort of a musician were you?
I play guitar and piano to this day, have the odd band that I play with for a bit of fun. Last gig I did was with a bunch of professional musos who'd made me look really good. One of them was Tony Mitchell, the bass guitarist out of Sherbet. He came up to my house every fortnight for a few months, along with some other professional musos, because I was determined to perform with a band at one of our conventions. We had a lot of fun putting together a few sets that allowed us to perform for a couple of hours.
You know, when it comes to being a muso, you said you were also an artist. So you've got this deep inside you, this whole creative side, and a lot of entrepreneurs, successful CEOs, business owners, they do have this creative streak. And that is probably played right into the lane of going into real estate. Do you feel that assisted you?
Most definitely, because you see things differently. You do. I mean, if you're black and white, you're rational, you've got a place, you've got a very important place in business to play. If you can find a good mix of both of those, and I was fortunate enough to be taught at a very, very, very early age to write things down and to set aside things that I might want to do and put them in writing. And I think combining those two things has helped me greatly to build the business that I have today.
Well, let's just sort of go back in terms of, as I mentioned, you're the Managing Director of Century 21 Australasia, so you're covering both Australia and New Zealand. When did you sort of get to that elevated decision where you said, right, I'm going to start buying up the franchises? Is that what happened?
Well, what happened was in 77, when I was 21, 22, I think it is, I had the chance to buy a real estate agency. I honestly didn't know what I was doing. I'd made a little bit of money out of buying a house when I was working in real estate, and I lived in it. I got some good capital growth, had a chance to buy the office I was working in. I always tell everybody I live by the philosophy that anything is possible when you don't know what you're doing, because if I knew what I was doing, I'd have took myself out of it. And so that office expanded to 5 offices by the time I was about 26, 27, and I started a franchise called Combined Real Estate, which I grew to 56 offices. And in 1993, the American parent of Century 21 were looking for somebody to take the brand for what they called Australasia. They'd had some hiccups here in Australia, and they came to the launch of my second book at a seminar I was doing, took me aside during a lunch break and asked if I was becoming a trainer and if I wanted to sell. And I said, no, I'm a trainer and an author, because this is how I prospect for agents and potential franchised offices. So they said, would I consider merging with them, which I said I would if they'd give me the option to buy it out. And in 1995, on the 29th September, I exercised the option and took out 100% back to Australian ownership for Century 21 Australasia.
And today, 2026, just how big is the operation that you are responsible for, both in New Zealand and Australia?
I can tell you the consumer knows the brand, but we've had a lot of competition in the industry, and if we've got 200 offices floating in Australia and New Zealand, I think we're doing okay. But that expansion now has moved us to United Arab Emirates and to India as well. And the American parent approached me about acquiring those regions, which I did a couple of years ago, with another gentleman by the name of Peter Matthews, who's taken equity in that part of the business. We've now launched the United Arab Emirates at the right time. I know it seems strange that there's a war going on, but when you're an established business, you've got to deal with what you've got. When you're a startup, you can work through all of the issues that are going on and build a business through them. And so Peter and his team have already done a remarkable job launching a Century 21 United Arab Emirates with a solid team of over 30 experienced agents that have joined, mainly, Craig, because the Century 21 brand is in 81 countries around the world. I have a relationship with all of those regional owners because I'm probably the longest standing one of them. And UAE requires international buyers. And so whether it's the Minister for Tourism and Commerce, the Attorney General, a variety of royal families, whether it's major developers, have all welcomed us in conversation and now under an arrangement to market their properties and work with them on a global basis.
Yeah, the UAE, Dubai in particular, it's such an interesting spot where we find ourselves at this time of the year for 2026. Of course, we've got the unresolved Iran conflict, and Dubai has 80% of their sales. It's all coming from off-plan. The amount of developments that are happening there in Dubai, well, it blows your mind unless you know what is going on there. Secondary market is so far behind. As I say, the off-plan is king, but as you rightly say, there are international buyers that are moving into the UAE.
Remember to follow us on any of the podcast platforms so you never miss a real estate podcast. You can follow us on Apple, Spotify, and Amazon. Know your property with us. Stay ahead of the competition with the latest news, insights, and data analysis on the property podcast that keeps you informed.
We were only finding out last week that some of these agencies in Dubai were actually closing as a result. Will they come back? Who knows? But it's a very testing time. Here's a question for you though. Very established with Century 21. When you go off and you decide, hey, I'm going to go into the UAE, I'm going to go into India, does that sort of get you inspired? Is that like, yeah, this is great. I'm going into a new market here, renewed enthusiasm?
Well, I think it's boring otherwise, Craig. If you don't have something on the go all the time. My family have given up on me. They claim that every Christmas I seem to make a decision to buy into something. That's probably never going to change for me. And also those markets are different. They have an established base, just like any other real estate base has. It's all about people, homes, supply, demand. The markets have got their own idiosyncrasies. So we go into the UAE, and without franchising, it'll be company owned. And Dubai is part of it. Abu Dhabi is even bigger. But that marketplace is representing off the plan, but from a different direction. The established market is coming stronger now because with this war, a lot of people are reevaluating whether they want to keep property there. So there's a whole range of different challenges.
Yes, and you talk about Abu Dhabi. Boy, the luxury market there, that is really starting to get into all sorts of fantastic space. You got the F1. That F1 has sort of transformed, I think, a lot of the luxury market. But we could talk all day when it comes to the UAE because I find it so fascinating. Let me, before we wrap it up, Charles, I want to take you back to the budget, CGT, capital gains tax, etc. What did you make of it?
I think they have some real challenges, Craig. It's successive governments that have created this issue. What I do think about it is the fact that moving negative gearing across to new homes to help take competitive buying out of the established market is probably one move that they haven't thought through, because they seem to think that investors are all wealthy people with 2, 3, 4, 5 properties. Investors haven't even started, some of them. Some of them haven't even started. And if they're going to start to become an investor, they're going to go where they can buy for the price they can afford. And that is going to be in the new home market, because the more and more of those properties are built on the outskirts of various cities, they are cheaper than going into the cities themselves. So all they've done is shifted the competition across from established homes to new homes. So in other words, if you're a builder, you'll probably do a lot better. But the reality is an investor is not somebody who buys an investment property in an established market just because it's there. They buy it because it's the best opportunity. So I think that's a big mistake that they've made, that they haven't thought through. The other part of what they're trying to do with capital gains tax is, of course, it's disincentivizing people. The negative gearing thing bothers me a great deal because, like any business, if I have a property, there's a cost and then there's an income. And I have to offset those against each other in any normal business. So I don't quite understand why negative gearing is different than any other business. I think they've created some serious problems there.
All right, we'll wrap it up there, Charles. So good to catch up with you on the Real Estate Breakfast this morning. It sounds like you are incredibly busy. You might be 5 decades, looking at 6 decades into real estate, but you've probably never been busier. So well done, and thanks for coming on to the Real Estate Breakfast this morning.
Thank you, Craig.
From first-time home buyers to seasoned investors to breaking property news, discover the stories behind the real estate.
So certainly investors are saying, well, if I want to get into the property market, commercial is a way to have a go and potentially to have a look at. It's quite varied in the sectors. Some sectors are performing particularly well, others are not performing quite as well.
So I guess the biggest issue that I have with this budget is that it proposes to take away aspiration from so many parts of our country. Young people wanting to get ahead, investors wanting to plan for their own retirement and not be a burden on the country.
Has the Australian investment property model, do you think, fundamentally changed for average mum and dad investors?
A lot of investors will probably shy away from investing in traditional real estate, and I think maybe they'll look to park their wealth more into their owner-occupied property, right?
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.